Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the Ammons haunting, which is the true story behind the new Netflix film Deliverance. So let's not waste any more time and get straight into it. This one is going to be a bit different, as I will be reading from an article written about this case. And the hook for this video is, what if your children began climbing walls and speaking in tongues? Would you believe in demons then? This happened to an Indiana mother who watched in horror as her kids levitated above the floor and shook their heads like Exorcist style. The chilling case of the Ammons family was so terrifying it's believed one of their children was possessed by the devil. Now, their story has been made into a new Netflix movie called Deliverance. But how true is it? Let's take a look at the real-life events that really took place back in 2012. LaToya Ammons and her 5 children had just moved into a modest $45,000 home in Gary, Indiana. The family were struggling, and their new house was far from perfect. It had its fair share of creepy crawlies and a few unwelcome guests. But LaToya believed it would do for a little while. But soon strange things began to happen. As the family began to settle in, they were plagued by swarms of flies and ominous dark figures lurking in the corner of their eyes. At night, they heard unexplained footsteps above them, and objects began to fly across the room. Then the terrifying events began to escalate. Her children, who range in age from 7 to 12, started acting out of character. They would scream and thrash around in their beds, and when they calmed down, they would tell their mother that they had no memory of the episode. Then one night, LaToya awoke to find her 7-year-old son Israel levitating above their bed. He was shaking and mumbling in a deep voice that wasn't his own. Fearing for her son's safety, LaToya screamed for help, and their pastor friend Edward rushed over. At first, he thought it was a case of sleepwalking. But as he approached the boy, Israel suddenly turned around and fixed his eyes on the pastor. Mumbling in that same demonic voice, he said, "Who are you? How dare you come into my house?" Edward cautiously backed away and immediately called the police. When officers arrived at the scene, they too witnessed the boy walking backwards up a wall. Even the most experienced officers on the scene admitted that they had never seen anything like it before. A police captain who'd been with the force for 25 years later said, "I've never had anyone call me and say they saw a kid walking up a wall. It was bizarre." Soon, all 4 of LaToya's children, along with her cousin Angela, who was staying at the house at the time, exhibited similar behavior. They were taken to hospital, where doctors found no physical explanation for the symptoms. It was at this point that LaToya believed the house they had moved into was haunted, and that her children were possessed by demons. She reached out to Father Albert, a local priest who specialized in exorcisms, who agreed to perform the ritual on the children. Following the exorcism, the house fell silent. There were no more footsteps in the night or objects flying around the room. However, the break in peace didn't last long. A few weeks later, the family gathered together for a prayer meeting when the boy, Israel, suddenly leaped up and shouted, "You can't save them! They're all going to hell!" With that, he passed out. LaToya rushed to his side and cradled him until he came around. She and the other adults in the room could do nothing but watch in horror as the boy convulsed and mumbled, "I am Lucifer." It was then that LaToya knew she had to get help from someone more experienced in the field of exorcisms. She reached out to Reverend Jose Maria Fernandez, an exorcist who had previously performed the ritual on people he believed were possessed. He visited the family home and spoke to each member individually. Then he turned to LaToya and told her he believed all 4 of her children were possessed. Together, they decided the best course of action would be to have the children secretly exorcised. While the possessions continued to escalate, Reverend Fernandez performed the exorcisms. During one particularly intense ceremony, he called on the power of Jesus Christ to cast the demons out of the children. As he did, the kids writhed around the room and furniture began to shake. One of the girls even bit off a chunk of wood from a chair and spat it out on the floor. Eventually, after several hours, the demons were gone. And once the ritual was complete, the children collapsed to the floor, weak and confused. In the days that followed, the house fell silent and the children appeared normal. However, the family were still shaken by the ordeal. And as they began to pick up the pieces, they knew that they could never forget what had happened. And that is the true story behind the Netflix film Deliverance. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you never miss another video. Until next time, thank you so much for watching.